this tour as well as what you're most interested in, because I could talk for hours, and we don't think we want that, but I want it to be of interest to you. So, Todd, I know you just mentioned kind of like this shared living aspect of what this community is all about, and you saw it in the permaculture meetup group, so that might be.
Well, and I also have founded a group called Springfield Eugene.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that too.
We're into sharing spaces, housing affordability, all that sort of thing.
Okay. And the two of you, what interests you? What would you like to hear about or see while you're here? I mean, you may not know yet, but.
Well, I'm a landscape architect, so I'm a little interested in how you deal with the grounds in a community-wide way.
Yeah, okay.
I like to see the nuts and bolts, specific examples of permaculture. I know the theory and everything. I just love to see how everybody implements it at their own place. So just the specifics of it, everything, the whole system.
I'm an architectural designer, so I'm interested in buildings, but I'm also
Fred
really...
Fred, thank you. Sorry. You're an architect.
Architectural designer.
Architectural designer.
But I'm also interested in community and shared living.
Okay. All right. Sounds like there's a kind of a mix of interest between sort of the exterior, the landscape, and our community. And those are.
And just sort of in general, taking a place that was underperforming both the indoors and the outdoors and doing something really cool with it.
Josh, would you mind doing those photos on the wall? People love to see those. Well, yeah, those two.
Oh, do you want the one from the 30s?
Sure, people like that one too. Yeah. So as I was explaining to some of those who were here earlier, that this is what the house looked like shortly after it was built. It was built in the late 1920s by the Christian College, as probably as a girls' home, and then it got divided up into apartments, which is how it was when we bought it in the early 90s.
Go ahead.
And yeah, thank you. And this is what it looked like when we bought it. So you can see it's kind of a blank slate.
Yeah.
Not very attractive. But there were 5 or 6 people living here.
Score.
And one thing to take note of, especially, is the back. This is the backyard, and you'll see that most of the backyard is a packed gravel parking lot. So that was definitely something to contend with, and has been an ongoing challenge to remediate that. But
was it ever a single-family residence?
Not this house. Okay. The one in the corner is now, but I don't think it. It's been that one has been a single-family house for about 15 years.
And you never had that glass thing that was part of the original house?
Yeah, we had. That's still there.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been a little bit reconfigured. You'll see it over there. Yeah. I don't know if that was original or if that was added shortly thereafter.
It's in the original photo.
Well, that's not actually from when it was built. That was 7 or 8 years in, so that might have still been added. Yeah. Anyway, so short story of how this house came about is that there were a group of people, myself and a handful of other people, some of who lived at myself. I lived at the student cooperative. I was a graduate student down the street, and I liked shared living, but I didn't want to necessarily live with 19 and 20-year-olds forever. I wanted to have a home ownership, and there were other people who were not students but still part of the community, had the wider community, wanted to have had a similar vision, and we wanted to not only live in community and encourage other people to do so, but we also wanted to live more ecologically. And this was 30 years ago. At the time, that is, still not that common, but it was even less common at that time. So, long story short is that we ended up creating a cooperative corporation, and we bought this house together. There were 8 of us who bought this house together, and we thought we would all work hard and renovate this house, live long and prosper together, and as things often work out, sometimes it's not so smooth sailing, and we had people who were co-owners or members of that cooperative come and go over the years. We got new people, some people left and so forth. And so that number's fluctuated. We always had a little extra room in the house, and so we rented the rooms that we didn't live in as community members. And then about 10 years ago now, the last person who was a member, co-owner, decided to move out, get married. So that left me in a situation where I had to make some decision, like, well, do I try to just kind of rekindle this after 15 years, restart? Or do I sort of take this on as sort of a sole proprietorship, but with the same mission? And so that's what I ended up deciding to do. And there's definitely been some trade-offs in making that choice. But I would say overall, I think for both the people who live here, as well as for me, it's been a better arrangement. Because, and I say that for myself, because it can have continuity without having to re-examine, revisit, visit like on a regular basis, which can, for other communities, be really exhausting. Yeah, every 2 or 3 years with new people coming in, they have a bright idea to do it its thing totally different way. After you've done that 5 or 6 times, you're like, I don't want to do that anymore.
Consensus.
Yeah. And that causes people who have the most stamina often to burn out and to leave. So that's not a good thing. But it's also, I think, good for the people who are living here, because they also benefit from continuity and from having someone who's going to be accountable, know things are going to happen, and can come and go much more easily than if you're a shared owner. So while I am really grateful we have places like East Blair and Walnut Street Co-op, which are true cooperatives. I think there's a place in the ecosystem for all kinds of different shared housing, and whether it's large, small, shared ownership. I mean, there's just so many variations, and I think that there still may be more options available. And what is coming towards us? Alexis is bringing stuff. Oh my goodness!
Wow! All of our food is delivered.
Currently we have 9 people living here. There's 5 men, 4 women. And we have 10 bedrooms in the house.
10 women, you said?
There's 9 people total. There's 4 women and 5 men. Oh. And we range in age between 28 and 60.
And 28 and 60.
Yeah, yeah, with quite a few in their 30s right now. But it's changed over time. Who's living here? We've had kids live here over the years. Not a lot. It's not super well set up for family, but we have had families live here. Oh my goodness!
Torturing us like.
You gotta explain this one.
You're feeding us too? This is great.
Remember your manners. Share with others.
This is leftovers from our board meeting, which is ongoing right now.
Well, we're a board too.
Yeah.
We just formed.
So, in creating, in wanting to create a community that inspires other people, we wanted to, I'll talk a little bit about the landscape. We wanted to create a landscape that is both inspiring as well as functional. And so, after a number of years of just sort of haphazard gardens in the back and plants here and there, we hired Heiko Kester, who is actually someone who lived here. So if you don't know him and want consultation, I highly recommend Heiko. He helped us come up with a design, and we implemented that over a number of years. It was a good 4 or 5 years actually to fully plant out both the front and the backyard. I can get that.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, thank you though.
So the emphasis on the landscape has been a variety of things, both to be edible, medicinal, and beneficial. Beneficial meaning pollinator, habitat, beneficial meaning nitrogen fixing, beneficial meaning native for other critters that might be out and about. And then finally, aesthetically beautiful. And so, especially in the front corridor by the street, a lot of emphasis has been on making it attractive. And especially come like May, it is just busting out in flowers and colors, and people walk by here and really love it. And part of the idea is to get people to slow down and stop. And same with the, the kissing nook and the poetry blocks. It's all like to engage with people to say, slow down, take a look, and then they'll hopefully look up and see the house and say, what is going on here? And then we've got the informational sign. Did we? I did. Yeah, I did. Let's do this by rock. Last thing from these pictures. Yeah. I got that idea from White. The informational side, like that's a good idea. So a lot of ideas are taken from other people or adapted from other people. Let's see. So in the front yard, we have some edible plants. We've got a plum tree, a couple of pear trees. We've got a persimmon tree, the dark leafy, medium-sized tree back there. There's another plum tree around the corner. Theoretically, this sugar maple tree could be tapped for syrup for at some point, as could the native big leaf maple could also be tapped, although I've never done that.
You can make syrup from big leaves, huh?
You can.
Wow.
I've never consumed it, but it's you can actually purchase it. And there's a number of other things that are edible here, or culinary, like rosemary right here. There's lavender and sage right behind you. There's elderberries, which are medicinal as well as edible. So there, as you can see, there's a lot of things that are just kind of sprinkled in through the landscape. And then there's things that are just ornamental, like the rock rose, which is really drought tolerant. At all levels, not only strengthening the relationships of people in the house, but also in the neighborhood. And so one way we've done that is by becoming a drop site for the community-supported agriculture. So anyone live in this neighborhood? Friendly. Well, anyway, this is a drop site for the Wintergreen farm. That's the farm that we have aligned with, and they have a couple other drop sites, including I think the friendly neighborhood. So you can count number of bins. What is that? About 25 bins or so. That's a number of families that come here every week from June through November to pick up a share of vegetables that come in from their farm in Notai. So incredibly yummy, nutritious, biodynamically grown food, and then heck, makes our life really easy. People just deliver to our door. So we curate this, take care of the bins and so forth in exchange, for the convenience of having this right here.
Is that what that is? Is that your information sheets for the
This
CSA?
is for the CSA. This is people check their
Gotcha.
names off
Right.
when they get their box.
And this is like 1 million gallons of water?
Yeah. So this is about a 1,300 gallon cistern.
Why mess around, right?
Yeah, and I took one summer and plumbed 5 of our 6 toilets inside so that it can flush the toilets. I don't use it for irrigation. People ask, well, why about using it for irrigation? And Jan, I don't know how much you use in irrigation. You got probably more storage capacity than I do here with this. You got more than one tank, but we've got a pretty efficient drip system. But even with the drip system, we would use this much water in about 3 weeks in July. So if you used all this up in, by middle of July, then your tank's empty and it's kind of useless the rest of the year. So that's why I've used this to flush toilets, because flushing toilets is a little bit all year long. It's very consistent, and then you only have one sort of drought period in the summer, and in the winter, as it empties, it can refill.
Does it always fill up, or is it in a dry year? Is it not full?
It can. Oh yeah, it can go down for sure.
I mean, but it always fills up every winter.
Oh, absolutely! It's already filled this from just the rains.
So what if you had 3 of them? Would they fill up?
Yep. This tank collects water from two corners of the roof. That corner and that corner over there, plus this little tiny porch. And it takes about 3 inches of rain to fill this up. So, in a regular year, normal year, if we were efficiently using it all, we would be filling this thing up about 14 times.
So last week probably filled it up, or this weekend.
Yeah,
storms
it
that
wasn't
year.
empty, but yes, it more than filled up, and there's an overflow, so it doesn't spill out. So one of the features about this rainwater harvesting system, which I think is really cool, and because it's a great educational piece, is that there's 2 different ways that the water ends up in this tank. So the first way, which is kind of the obvious way, is that you can see the gutter and the downspout there right underneath the eave, and just around the corner, it's just out of sight, is the pipe that comes down and comes into the top of the tank. So that's just a gravity fed, very simple. There's some filters there, and that fills this up pretty well. But we thought, it would be nice if it filled up more quickly, and especially in the shoulder seasons. We'd like it if a little bit of rain could fill a lot. And so I thought, gosh, it's only a quarter of the roof. It's actually less than a quarter. How can we get water from somewhere else? What about that side over there? And so I'm like, well, how are we going to get the water from over there and that downspout around the corner over here? And at first I'm like, well, we have to cross the windows, or I don't know. I don't see how that's going to happen. And then I learned about the wet pipe method, a rainwater collection, and what that consists of, and I can show it to you. Just right around the corner there. The downspout comes down. It's all sealed up in PVC pipe. Here, why don't we just go on over here and I'll show it to you. Here it is, right here. This is PVC pipe, and this is all sealed joint, and it comes down. It comes out to here, goes to the tank, and it goes up to the top. So
Oh, that's what that
this
is.
is filled with water all the time,
Right.
up to the height
Right.
of the infill in the tank. And when it rains, water comes down here and it pushes it right into the tank.
Wow.
So that's called a wet pipe.
Under pressure.
It's so simple, but
It's like a tankless transfer, I didn't know, but it still works on the equilibrium. Wow.
yeah. Let's just backtrack just a second because there's something cool kind of going on over here. You might have noticed these orange berries. Are you growing any of these, Jan? Have you ever grown these?
No, I don't know what those are.
These are called sea berries, or sea buckthorn. They're very nutritious. They also medicinal, and you're starting to see them, like if you go to a natural food store, you're seeing sea buckthorn in a lot of skincare products and other natural care products. And in some parts of the world, Eastern Asia, Eastern Europe, you can purchase sea berry concentrate or drink. And that's what I'm going to do. This is a very good crop of them. I'll show you. I can show you where I just harvested them.
You're going to juice them?
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, and this is actually a good opportunity to ask for some help. These are very hard to pluck from them, and you can see the thorns. So it would be weeks to pluck all of these things. So some brilliant person got this idea. The way to harvest these things is to put them in the freezer until they're frozen, and then take them inside this container like this and go whack, 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 and the berries fall off while they're still frozen. Then you can juice them. And the juice is exquisite. It's really, really good, but it needs to be sweetened. I mean, one of these things must be like a vitamin C pill. Like, you're welcome to try one. They're very tart, I'm just telling you, but they're really tasty. So, it's like sucking on a lemon, but it's got flavor.
No, I'm not going to. But that's how I get my elderberries too. I freeze them and then it's really easy to
Oh, okay.
strip
I've never
them
done that
right
to
off.
elderberries. You see how hard it is to pull them off there.
Danger.
You try these?
I
Yeah,
feel
it's
so
not-
healthy.
I don't think I've had one before.
Feel the health coursing through your veins.
Wow.
So,
Damn, I
if
feel it already.
anyone has say, a chest freezer that is empty, or a walk-in freezer, it would be so much easier just to be able to like do that for 24 hours, you know, like I only need it for 24 hours, than to try to get it into our freezer little bits at a time. So, I'll put that out to the wider community, maybe someday. Next door, I'll use that. All right.
Can I just follow up on the graywater?
Sure.
use? Did you have to get permits or special
Right.
treatment of the water
Okay.
to use it in the toilet?
So first of all, technically that's not gray water; it's rainwater.
Right.
Because we haven't used it. And there is a permitting process that the city has not gone through the permitting process. I'm not so sure if we need permitting for toilets. I think you do, because they're concerned about backflow of rainwater into the supply system. But the way I've designed it, there's no way that could possibly happen. So I'm not too concerned about
So functionally, it's no maintenance problem really,
No.
other than regular
Well,
rain
yeah,
catchment system.
right. I mean, I have to clean gutters, I have to clean the filter, repair the pump, so forth. But yeah, that's
That's it. Okay.
yeah. So we got compost, chickens. The hens must be back in the corner. You'll see them somewhere.
Hey, one more question about the
Yeah.
the using of rainwater. What is the big picture of water in the Willamette Valley? Because it looks to me like there's massive amount of water flowing right past here on the Willamette River and the Mackenzie River. Is there a water shortage in the Willamette Valley at the other end of the valley?
Wow, that's a lot to answer that question. I mean, when you say a shortage, I mean that would define it in terms of human needs. Certainly, as humans draw off water for agriculture and municipal uses, there's less for the wildlife and for replenishing groundwater supplies and so forth. So I mean, we've already altered the hydrologic system in the valley tremendously by draining all of the the wetlands and so forth. So that's a really complicated question to answer. I mean, certainly.
Oh, and then the water that we collect and use as rainwater doesn't flow through the aquifers and into the Willamette River, so it's a zero sum almost, or what?
It's true. I mean, it would go to the rivers, but with so much area covered by asphalt and by roofs, when there's a heavy rain event, rivers can flood, and because of this, all of that runoff rather than percolation. So, in a very small way, we're keeping that from entering into the river so quickly.
And if you had some problem with the water system, you could have a water shortage like at everybody's house. We're very dependent on the water coming out of the tap, and there's no guarantee that's always going to happen. Having 1,000 or 2,000 gallons of rainwater stored on site makes a lot of sense.
It does, and Jan's helped organize this resiliency festival a little while ago, and if for some reason the water supply shut off with a filter, with a backpacking filter, or if we had access to fuel, we could sterilize that water.
Easy.
Yeah.
Or a little bit of bleach.
Yeah. So that.
Okay.
That's we could supply a lot of people in this neighborhood for a while anyway. Yeah. One other little thing I'll point out to you is I don't think I ever showed this on a tour here, but do you see the half cut barrel there? That is a native plant called wapato, and that is kind of coming to the end of its life cycle right now. It's a native wetland plant to the Pacific Northwest. You'll see it in the Willamette River and the Columbia River, a lot of other places, and it produces a very tasty little bulb. And so I grew that last year for the first time. Got a small harvest, hoping to get a little bit more this year.
Is that like arrowroot or?
It does look, the leaves do look a lot like it, but it's a totally
not.
different plant. Yeah.
Okay.
I also just mentioned about rainwater too. I can point it out to you around on the other side. You know, a lot of people have their gutters feed directly into the stormwater system, like going out to the street, which is ultimately the stormwater system, because of wet basements or wet yards or so forth. But to the extent that one can have a downspout that runs into a yard, that's another way to help get water percolating into the soil. And so, because that's a lot of water, and you don't necessarily want that much water in your yard in the middle of winter, in addition to all the rain that falls, we have a method on a different downspout in the corner there where I can hook up a hose and then use that for irrigation. So I'll use that in the shoulder seasons, like right now. So the first few inches of the soil are wet from the rain, but below that is probably still dry.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the rains that we've had recently, I've been able to get some deeper irrigation by moving a hose around when it rains. And then when it starts really raining, the soils get saturated. Done with that, you know. And the same is true with our graywater efforts here. So this hose here,
Jacuzzi.
right here, is goes to our washing machine. The washing machines have a pump that can usually lift the water up about 6 feet, and
Oh my God, it's a kayak.
oh, yeah, you'll have to hear more about this later.
Very particular
It's a very specialized kayak.
Yeah.
So this hose here, oh, I think I hear the pump. Is that the washing machine, Josh?
Well, the fountain's on.
Well, okay, no, but I thought I heard it down.
Oh,
Anyway, so when the washing machine is in its spin cycle, the gray water will come out of this. And I'll just use it to water the lawn, trees.
Do you use a particular kind of soap?
Yeah, it has to be a biodegradable soap. Yeah. Okay, so remember the photo that you saw of what the backyard looked like with the parking lot? Wow. There it is. There it is. Pretty amazing. A lot of effort to get that gravel removed, and now these are all gone.
You did. You had to remove all the gravel.
This is a dead end path, but let's go down it anyway. There's something else you can try. I love giving tours when people get to try nibbling on things, especially things they haven't had. There's some raspberries. So this is a cornelian cherry, which is actually a dogwood. And I'm harvesting them because I know how to get one that's gonna probably taste good. And you might not, so you can try. It's got a pit. There's a pit in it, and they have a very unusual flavor.
Thank you. Oh, they're so big. I've seen
Tell me
like
what you
little
think.
ones.
Hopefully they're not astringent.
Like the usual dogwood fruit. Very
No.
different.
Was that like a little sauna or something?
I said it's a sauna.
Oh my goodness.
Oh wow.
I didn't even know this was back there.
So what I've actually found, well, you like them?
Good.
Well, help yourself. They're, you know, you got to get them just. If you get them too firm, they're gonna make your mouth pucker.
Wow.
You have to get them mushy, huh? Pretty much.
And if it's too mushy, then they're kind of like mushy and not so. So there's a very narrow window when they're ripe. I have found that they're actually even more delicious and easier to eat. Well, there's so many of them you can't eat them fresh. So I found that I can make a sauce from them.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And the sauce is delicious.
And jam would be excellent jam from these.
Yeah, probably. So,
Thank you.
sure, like, is this going to get enough light? And there's a couple times where I've discovered when something suddenly got more
Yeah,
like, oh, now it's suddenly fruits. 'Cause it's-
Lemonade berry?
No, this is a native silk tassel. So, not only do we have the mushroom popping up here, we also have this mushroom.
Shiitake.
Oh,
What do you call it?
that look exact.
There's 4 types of mushrooms that we inoculated into these logs. It hasn't been as successful as I had hoped, but we have gotten some blue oyster and shiitake mushrooms. I just harvested some shiitake. These are all from oak limbs that came down after the big ice storm almost 3 years ago. So I'm not sure.
So it just keeps going?
Well, theoretically, yes. I'm not sure. Like I say, it hasn't been very successful in terms of the amount of production. 2 of the varieties haven't produced at all. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there.
Did you just plug and wax them? Or?
Yeah. We've got our. So, then you wanted to hear about solar panels. I wanted to come over here because from here you can see the edge, the main roof are the photovoltaic panels. And nowadays, when people say solar panels, that's what they think. They think photovoltaic, that they produce electricity. But back in the day, not that long ago, when you said solar panels, usually what people were referring to were thermal panels to heat hot water. And those have pretty much disappeared now, but we still have them. We've had ours for 20 years. So these 2 panels that are on this pantry roof here, those collect infrared radiation. So they're not producing electricity. There are coils of water that run through, well, actually coils of antifreeze that run through those and then go down into the basement. See the pipes run down the side of the house there. And then down into the basement where we have storage tank. And if you're interested, I can show you the storage tank. And so on a hot day, even on a day like this, which is pretty much full sun day, our 80-gallon storage tank will heat up to about 140 degrees. So that's a lot of free hot water. So there's 9 of us who live here, and of course we see each other all the time because we have one kitchen, which you'll see in a moment, and one dining room, and so we're in and out. And one of the things that I try to emphasize is that community is about relationships, and that's something that like constantly needs tending and nurturing and creating. It's not. I think sometimes people just want to move in and experience it, and I'm like, you got to actually create it. You got to make it happen. And not every, some people do that more than others, and so some people we see a lot more than other people who live here, and some people take more actively involved and engaged than others.
So like how would it happen that you were going to use the compost?
Right. So we do have house meetings about every maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and every once in a while someone will be like, I think it's time to have a pizza party, and we'll set a date, and that's something that really does pretty much requires a handful of people to if we're going to make the pizza dough and toppings and tend the fire, it takes a bunch of people to do that. So it's not like someone can just say, hey, I'm going to go do this some afternoon. And usually when we have a party like that, we'll also invite friends or neighbors or some other people to come on over.
Is that what this wood is for?
Maybe like 2 to 4 times a year, I would say.
Yeah. I'll explain how this works if you haven't seen how it works. You asked about the wood. No, the wood is for this.
I know, it's funny.
I know, I've kind of just let this grow because I think it's kind of an interesting aesthetic having the trumpet vine just like grow over it. But this is actually a little fire pit that we use from time to time as well. But let's see.
How do you find your community?
How do you find it? Yeah, that's a difficult question. There's 2 different divergent theories. You create the vessel and people show up who are appropriate, or you find the people that you're already in relation with and then create a space for it. And of course, there's all sorts of variations of that. And I think that there's pros and cons to both. We chose the buy the house first and then find the people. And in a place like Eugene where there's people coming and going, it probably makes sense to do that, and especially with a community of this size. But certainly there's a lot of informal communities of people, 4 or 5 people who live together for years and years. They may even call themselves a community. They're just friends and they just love living together, and that's a great thing as far as I'm concerned, and that is community. And there's communities that aren't even under one roof. There's neighborhoods that are really tight. So there's no one way to make it.
Do you ever say no to someone who wants to live here?
Yep. Oh yeah.
What are the criteria?
Right. So over the years, the criteria have changed. When we first got started, we were really value based, and we had 5 values, and we really asked people, are you aligned with these values? Like ecological responsibility and diversity, and so on and so forth. And what we found is that almost everyone said, yeah, I believe in them, and this means a lot to me. But then how did it actually come about, in their practice? It's like, or can we live with them? That person holds all the values that I hold, but I don't like living with them. So over time, the criteria has become a lot more intuitive and a lot more about someone's capacity to live with other people. And trying to assess that when you don't know someone can be really tough. And we have definitely made some mistakes. Sometimes where everyone in the house is like, yeah, that person seems great. We'd love to live with them. And then for whatever reason, doesn't necessarily work out. And then there've been other situations where, maybe it's been the opposite, where we've been like a little bit hesitant and then it works out fantastic.
So is there a trial basis? I mean, how do you?
And at one time we did have a trial. And sometimes we will have people stay here for like a few nights just to kind of see what it's like. We have a guest room. Probably ought to do that more. I think it might be a good way for people to see kind of what a daily experience is here. But as you know, it's pretty hard to get to know someone in just like a few days. So there's a bit of, you're taking a risk.
Trial by fire in the communal living.
Yeah, and this is the pro tip here. I'll say. I mean, it's what I've had to learn the hard way, because in our early days, we probably on the average about every 5 years, roughly, there's someone that's really, really causes a lot of drama and strain in our community, and I think in the early days, at least I was definitely a type of person of like, we can figure it out, we can solve it, we can like learn and
then
grow.
Then you learn how to punt.
And that, looking back, has actually just led to just like more like digging the pit deeper. Because there's certain kinds of conflicts that are very hard when they're about personality. They're just really, really tough to just like, they don't really solve. They just find another way to become a problem. And so I think for better and for worse, one of being the sort of sole proprietor, being sort of and the buck stops here, that is the ultimately in the last 10 years, when we've had some people who haven't worked out, I'll be like, this isn't going to work. And I have to deliver that news. And that's a lot of responsibility for me. I don't really like it, but also if we were in the community model we had from years before, it probably would have gone on a lot longer, and we probably would have lost people who were really positive, contributing people, because we all tried hard and just got burnt out trying to make it work. So in the last few years, we've had both a situation that was one where I could see the handwriting on the wall, and could see that no matter how hard we tried, that it would probably come up difficult again and again, and I had to just be like, okay, we can't go on with this. And that was, looking back, a good choice. It was not easy. It was really hard, and actually worked out better than I might have. And then in contrast, we had a conflict this year in our house where it was a very well, call a discrete conflict between mostly between two people, and it wasn't a personality conflict. It was a situational conflict, and in that circumstance, like I saw, like we need to just like come up with a solution for this problem that these two people are having, and so we got some outside help, and we worked through that and had the whole group part of that, and everyone is still living here today, and for the most part, I think, hopefully happily. Not that it was easy. We had
Group counseling? When you say help?
we had someone who was good at facilitation and interpersonal skills and
Mediation.
it wasn't formally mediation.
Yeah,
but
it was a type of mediation because
Yeah.
it primarily was between two people,
yeah.
and so it was the facilitator and those two people, and the rest of us were more in just a witness. Kind of role.
And then how do you treat a housemate who actually has the nerve to leave on their own and then somewhat later want to come back?
We welcome them with warm arms.
He's
Do
talking
they
about
get
me.
any sort of special consideration or wait your turn or what? How do you manage? And how does that turn out?
Well, so far, so good. Yeah. It's been quite a pleasure living with Josh.
Thanks.
Because Josh came to live in my house, which has a considerable less degree of intentional community about it, and I think probably dug it, but felt like he missed being here at DUMA, and they took him back.
What did you miss about it?
Luckily, I am a fairly social person, so when I lived with Jan, it was actually with the intention of just being more independent and on my own, and I just wanted to try something different. But I do like the more social atmosphere, and I really like how we do food here. We all put in a couple $100 every month. We buy food together, and then we take turns cooking dinner. So most of us cook one evening every other week, and so then 4 nights a week, someone's cooking dinner for the group, and
Wow.
yeah, and so it's nice, and not everybody's there at any given dinner, but it's still it's so nice to be cooked for 3 or 4 nights a week, and
Really good food, too.
yeah, really good.
If you don't mind me telling folks a little bit about the room downstairs, too, I think that's
Yeah, right.
also,
You have an
yeah, or
opening?
you talk about it, because I think that it seems like that's something that has really contributed to, your fulfillment being
Yeah,
good
yeah.
again.
Yeah, so in March we had a housemate move out, and she was in this room right down here. There's 2 rooms in the basement, and it's the only room with a door to the outside. And so I started renting it. I have a bedroom on the 2nd floor, but I'm also renting this basement room as a meditation and kind of group meeting space. And so I've been doing that since April. And that's been great. There's a couple of us that meditate almost daily in the room, and I've done a few different like compassionate communication practice groups in there. And I'm hoping to do some more groups that will use them. And then I've had the thought, I've not really made any progress, but to get maybe someone who does massage therapy or something similar who might want to share the space, use it in the day, contribute to the rent. But it's been cool to have a dedicated space that's where people can meet, or it's fairly quiet. So I don't know. Do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, but if you want to take an NVC class, talk to Josh,
Yeah.
because he's
About to start
all
one.
about communication. Is one of your 2 classes going to be here? I can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So one of them is, yeah.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
One of your areas you talked about was how you share cooking food.
Yeah, yeah.
And so are there any other major features of your living arrangements that would be different from just a boarding house?
Right, right. So, I mean, we do things together from time to time. That we've talked about things like, pizza parties or camp outs or so forth. I will touch on a little bit about the responsibilities about the yard and the garden, because I think you asked about that, like how does that work? And obviously it's a huge yard, and there's a lot of complexity to it. And so what I've learned through trial and error is to give people any latitude and help support they want to interact with the garden in any way that they want, whether that's harvesting, whether that's having part of a bed to grow flowers or tomatoes or do what they want, or not interact with it at all, because people have just very differing levels of interest, time, and experience. So kind of what it comes down to is if other people don't, then I'm going to take care of it. But I love it when people do want to interact, and I have various ways to try to get people more connected with the landscape.
But it's not a burden for you.
It's a lot of work, and I enjoy it most of the time, but sometimes it does feel like it's a bit of a burden, and I'm trying to get more help to do that. So I've done work trade with people in the house and starting to get help with pruning and other things like that. So it doesn't feel quite so much of a heavy lift at certain times of the year.
What about noise? Are people allowed to make a little noise or no noise? Or
It's funny, we tend to be a fairly quiet house.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not,
nobody plays electric guitar. Huh?
Well, one person, but he didn't live here for very long. He lived in the other basement room. Yeah, every once in a while he would. He'd be in the kitchen and hear him, but no, I find it really nice because I find people are pretty respectful of one another. But at the same time, occasionally we'll have parties or gatherings, or and often it's like mostly housemates and everybody invites a couple friends and that kind of party. I really like to play the piano, so occasionally when I think most people are gone, I'll just rock out.
Why don't we go inside and I'll show you our kitchen, and you can see how we divvy up the chores.
Right, that was my next question.
Yeah.
And how do you divvy up the refrigerator space with 9 people?
We'll see that.
2 refrigerators.
Shoes?
You can leave them on. I'm just going to drop them.
We're not tracking in Cornelian cherries or anything.
Yeah.
Oh, it smells so good in here.
So you can see you're walking through the pantry.
Do you all eat dinner together, or that's optional?
It's optional. It's encouraged for people to eat together, and typically there'll be maybe 4 or 5 people for dinner. Yeah. So as you can see, we have 2 refrigerators, and we've got one here kind of for our produce, which is what most people use for cooking the main meal, and then a fridge more for leftovers. And because we purchase our groceries together, there's not so much need for dividing a fridge space for individuals. We don't have shelves for each individual like a lot of shared houses do. That said, if people want to set something aside for themselves, then just put their name on it and it's set aside.
But the shared meal's only dinner?
Yeah, and we often have enough. Encourage people to cook lots, so there'll be leftovers.
Oh, right.
Which is really nice because got something for lunch. People make their own breakfasts. Breakfast is often one of the things that people are most creative about.
What was the last 3 nights? What did you eat?
Let's see. Well, you made.
I copied Alan. It was a stew, but it was really interesting. It was tofu, tomatoes, and corn were really good.
It was a kind of curry.
Yeah, with like curry flavors. So Alan did it one night just for himself. I'm like, all right, I'll try it. So then I made a bigger pot the next night.
You're good at memory. So what did we have the 2 nights before that? Jennifer made something amazing, I'm sure.
Is it usually vegan?
Probably.
It's either vegan or vegetarian.
What did she make?
So yeah, she made. Oh, she made those wraps. She made a.
Oh,
not
enchiladas.
Yeah, she made
Yeah,
enchiladas.
yeah,
Both,
enchiladas.
yeah, both corn as well as like cabbage enchiladas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
You do a big bulk order once a month together?
Right, so we get most of our bulk foods you see up here, the dry goods from the growers market. Are you familiar with the growers market?
I'm not.
It's right next to, or across from the Amtrak station, train station.
Huh.
And it's kind of an unusual buying club of sorts where you can go once a week. Produce comes once a week on Thursdays. There's a couple of days that it's open, but there's just limited hours when people show up, and they have both dry goods as well as produce. And so that's where we get most of our dry goods, but we also, from time to time, purchase directly from Hummingbird Wholesale.
Right.
And they have a pretty high minimum order, so we are now going in with the Walnut Street Co-op. So once a month we place an order and divide things up. So, from an ecological perspective, I say that the most ecological home that exists is the one that doesn't have to be built, and which seems like a little trick question you asked me. What's the most ecological home? It's the one that doesn't have to be built. And so by putting people under, when we're under the same roof, or even if it's a small home, if you turn a 3-bedroom home into a 4-bedroom home, or 2 into a 3, or whatever it is, there's an efficiency of scale, economy of scale, from everything from utilities to purchasing food. And so we're able to, because we're able to purchase in bulk, our waste stream is really, really low. And of course we also recycle and so forth. So, but I would be fascinated if some research, if you know any researchers who want to study the ecological footprint of shared living versus of conventional living, I'd love to have someone do a study like that.
Just packaging alone, your whole method of this huge waste reduction.
Yeah.
And communal.
Yeah, and so many other things. I mean, we have one, we pay for one Wi-Fi, network, or, one cable bill rather than 4 or 5 or so forth. So.
How many cars are in the household?
Yeah.
6,
Yeah.
out of the 9 of us.
Yeah. If you don't include me.
Well, that's better than
Yeah,
nothing.
6.5. 6.5.
How much is the rent?
It depends on the room. So it varies. The rooms are all different sizes and shapes and qualities and character. They go from $395 to $495. That doesn't include the food or the utilities.
How do you divide utilities up then?
Well, because they change from month to month,
Yeah.
I've just averaged it out over the course of a year, and it just make it one lump sum of $80 a month. And I'm going to just show you. Let's see.
The
You
chore
can
chart.
stay here. I'll just grab it. I think it's easier to just pass these around.
Let's get a refrigerator shot.
Now we.
No, we don't need that.
The whole fridge.
So, I'm going to ask how chores get done. It's really tiny print, so I can pass it around. But basically, here are all of our chores, and then this person's name. So everything from cleaning bathrooms to taking care of the chickens and buying our food, and each one of them is associated with
Have you seen this?
a rough amount of time it takes to do that chore in a given week.
And you made that?
This was actually something that we derived from the student co-ops back in the day.
Really?
And it's been modified a little bit, but this is essentially the same thing. So it's worked pretty well for us. We've done other things, like we had a chore wheel for a while. A lot of shared house. Yeah, we'll do, it's like my turn. This week it's my turn to take out the garbage, your turn to clean the bathroom. And that worked okay, but there's some advantages of having just the same person do the same thing for a while. Because then you just don't have to think about like what week is it or what am I doing and how do I do it and so forth.
And the chores people like.
And
people
that
tend
too.
towards, yeah.
That too. And then most people take at least one shift a week. Most people cook, and they either cook every week or every other week, depending on what number of other chores that they might have. So most of us actually cook every other week. And so we have a little chart here so we know who's cooking, and then each person's chore, and then on this is really helpful. We just started doing this a while back. One of our housemates came up with this chart, which has been super helpful. Where we have a calendar with people's regular cook nights listed, but then there's invariably changes that people negotiate or need to make for whatever reason, and so they'll make swaps and cross it out with the other person's name, so they kind of know what to expect, and that makes it a lot. It meets my need for predictability. And
What's the average turnover in a year? How many people would come and go? It probably varies a lot.
It varies. It does. I want to say probably about 3 people per year.
And is it because of the graduation cycle, or is it just people?
Well, we don't have very many students
Oh,
live here.
It's only
right.
a quarter mile to the.
It's true. Well, we could. It would be.
Yeah, we prefer.
Yeah, it'd be very easy to fill this house with students because of its proximity to the university and what we provide. And experience has been that people who are students don't have a whole lot of time for really contributing to creating community. And so if there's a prospective housemate, and we do usually interview a number of prospective housemates before selecting one. If there's someone who's at the university, do like a deeper level of inquiry, like, okay, what's your workload going to be like? What program are you in? What other kind of activities do you have, to really find out whether they're going to be really available and to be here, because just too often they're sleeping in the architecture studios or whatever, and then it's just kind of like, well, it works for them usually to have a place where they can come and get food, but it doesn't really necessarily work.
There are other places for that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've definitely learned over time is to really be articulate about what sort of the hope and expectations is of prospective housemates, and what a sort of like what an ideal housemate might be like, so that someone can, and then there's a handout, like a 2-page handout you give to each person saying, this is kind of what we're looking for, and if you don't really fit this, then you might think that then this might not be the place. You'd rather have people self-select out. It's much better for people to say, this isn't maybe quite the right place for me, than for us to start living together and find it out a few months later.
Clear communication up front.
Yeah. I mean, there's no end to refining that communication.
So do you get the sense there's like 5 intentional communities, and you're cherry picking the best, most cooperative and conscious people, and so no wonder it's successful. But anyway, do you think that there's a market? Do you think there's enough really conscious people that potentially would be good roommates that another one like this would have no problem finding people?
I think, if there was a house like this, another part of town, I think it would be no problem.
Got to have the house.
Yeah, yeah. This took years and years to get to be what it is today.
Does it have to take years and years, or could you coach them up to speed, in 3 years?
These are all questions that I'm pondering right now, because I've been thinking a lot about possibility of replication, either whether it's myself or someone else.
You can get a business process going.
Because we need to see more shared living, for a variety of different reasons, which I'm sure you all can enumerate. So the question is, like, how do we make that happen? Because it's not something you can do cookie cutter. If someone does do a cookie cutter, or formulaic, would be very skeptical of it. And there actually are people who are kind of starting to try that. I'm not so sure that.
Well, there's a whole co-living industry. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, there's, what I'm thinking of is that there's some companies like WeWork
Right.
who have,
Yeah, and We Live, yeah.
We Live.
In common.
Yeah, and that's another one. And those are, I haven't looked into them deeply, but they're mostly in big cities where housing is even more expensive than it is here, and I think a lot more sort of programmatically taken care of for people. And I think they'll just kind of accept anyone who can just pay the rent. And, yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction, but it's not what I'm interested in really creating.
Well, they do sort of sell like a certain degree of purpose-driven life and common values and social activities and all of that.
Yeah.
But what that actually is and whether you can have that on a large scale.
Yeah.
You know, I have not experienced that directly to
There's
say
a lot.
what I think.
A lot of debate, I think, in people who've lived in community or want to live in community about like what's the right number of people, and I don't know what the answer to that is. I think this number is a good number because it's a number in our time in our society where people can relate with and know what's going on in each other's lives, at least to some meaningful extent. Maybe some more than others, but. You get a certain number, just keeping track of who they are and what their lives are like is just overwhelming, and so then they become more distant and sort of more housemate, if you will, than just a community member. So, anyway.
Well, this is
There we go.
unbelievably interesting, you know. I mean, Alan, you know, and Josh, you know, and I'm not saying it's over because I'm going to probably leave soon. But, you know, to hear this is what it's like living in a place like, everybody's got good stories, we've all got good stories. But, you know, to share a house with 8 or 9 people and sort of have this kind of intentionality and look at the yard, you know, and look at it like it's inside here. I mean, it's a good example of what people can do if they make time for it. Because Alan makes time for doing this. This doesn't happen by itself.
Should I ask, like, do you have like a job? Or
This is his job.
It is now.
his job.
This is my primary activity. And I mean, I've had other work prior to being sort of the sole proprietor here, and I mean, one thing that's great is it also gives me flexibility to be engaged in the wider community too.
So
Was
you're
it
the
volunteer?
the DUMA community manager.
Yeah, you could say that. I don't like to use that word, but
Right.
yeah.
Oh.
Were you in the software?
Community facilitator?
Yeah.
Community fertilizer?
Poobah.
Poobah? Yeah, Poobah.
Poobah.
Poobah is excellent, yes.
I mean, I think one thing that I really strive to do, and I mean, Josh, you could talk about this, but other people said I do a pretty good job trying to wear 2 hats of being, you know, both the owner and the landlord, and you know, taking care of all the things that need to be taken care of, but then also just being a housemaid as much as everyone else. So that's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that everyone's cut out for, I think.
No.
I think the wisdom of your experience shows just the trial and error, just being able to share a kitchen, having lived in all kinds of communal situations, that you can get people cooking. This is well functioning, is so much work and takes intention. It's really impressive that it's been going this long, that you're organized like this. Just speaks for itself to how well it's functioning.
People are drawn to that. I mean, they know.
I'll mention also that it must have been a few months ago. I have a program on a local radio station, and a few months ago, one of my episodes was kind of intentional community in Eugene, and interviewed Alan, and interviewed Rob Bowman at Maitreya, and interviewed Skeeter Duke at East Blair, and those interviews are online. You know, they're podcasted, and Alan certainly touched on some of that stuff that was in our interview, but some other things maybe not quite so much. But there are 2 other people that I essentially kind of asked similar questions: what's going on here and why? but getting into some of the organization, you know, how's decision making, what have been some of the issues. So anyway, the podcast is there, and via my website, you know, there's a link from my website to the podcast site, and you can go to that podcast and you can see a list of what I've recorded over the last almost a year. And it says, you know, interviews with these guys here. So if you, that's another way to kind of find out a little more and compare, you know, because they're intentional communities in a sense, but they're really different. You know, they have their own kind of own personalities and setup. It's very interesting. I would think you would get, you know, some sociology student who would love to live here and do their thesis, you know, on this place, you know.
Eileen's doing it. I have a friend who's a sociologist. She's probably just studying it, but not.
So we should look up what she's published to see if we're in.
The names have been changed, but it
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
really familiar.
So, I got a question. The rent sounds like it's a little below market, and so if so, why aren't you charging market rent if you're the owner, basically? And
But no, don't give them any ideas.
Don't give me any idea.
so I mean, this is going to inspire people, you know.
Well, partly can do that because we've got a house that's been that's used more efficiently. Yeah, so originally this consisted of 6 apartments, and there were 6 or perhaps 7 people living here. So now we have 9, maybe 10 people living here. So part of that ability to be able to keep the rents low is because we're able to divide that up amongst more people. It also helps that the mortgage is on its way to being paid off after a lot of years. So that's certainly, yeah. In the early years, the amount that we had to charge ourselves as a cooperative was a lot higher compared to the market, market value. So
Do you think any of your ecological measures really pay off financially? Like your hot water, heating?
Yeah, I think that the photovoltaic,
Water
yeah.
saving.
Oh, I think the photovoltaic panels and the thermal panels definitely have or will pay them off, but only because there's tax credits and other kinds of incentives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things maybe not so much, but they're just the right thing to do. So. And fun. I think they're fun.
And your photovoltaics are tied to the grid. You're on intertie, I'm assuming.
I don't have any other questions. All right, stick around. I mean, I'll be here. So.
I think Alan likes to do this. Yeah.
I've done it a lot of times. So
I think he
know the
does.
terrain.
Yeah, usually. Although when it's summertime, we'll often eat on the picnic table.
Yeah, so we can continue through here because you didn't really see the. We've got all the bedrooms are upstairs and downstairs. So the first floor is a common space, and as Josh mentioned, this is our most of the year we here. And we've got a little kind of shared office nook over there, the bathroom. You need to use the bathroom. There's one.
This place has so much character.
I really enjoy the colors and the natural light.
Yeah. So much fun.
Living room with a fireplace that works.
The guest bedroom, or is
And
that?
that's the guest bedroom there. So we have friends and family that come and stay here.
And sometimes bicycle tourists. Which are
Some
fun.
bicycle tourists, yeah.
Oh, the pass through?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
we're on a
that's also-
website that
sort of part of the whole, being welcoming to friends and family and extending community beyond our own walls. Yeah.
How often do people just hang out down here?
Well-
I mean, is it used much?
It's funny, Josh and I are probably two that spend most time in here.
kind of comes and goes. I mean,
But yeah, it does kind of come and go.
yeah, there's way. I mean, a couple nights ago, there were 4 of us watching the Democratic national debate. And, the TV is hidden, but it's behind those
Oh, my.
his doors over there.
Isn't that?
So I mean, that was fun. That was one time, but few of us.
And as the weather changes and it gets dark early, I'm sure there's more.
We'll occasionally do movies together, or every once in a while we'll do a game night, and it's rare that all of us are at any given event, but you might have half of us at something.
Spontaneous, yeah.
It's a long time ago, but my recollection is before the internet, the people used to hang out downstairs a lot more. I mean, maybe I'm making that up, but I remember people like, after dinner, like, well, we're gonna hang out and read or knit or
Talk to strangers. Yeah. It's definitely changed.